Well, hello there, traders and investors. I'm LA Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets, doing it from a neoclassical perspective. That means each day we ask ourselves what happened today. What does it tell us about the coming ones? I do a show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube, and it's under the channel LA Little. If you haven't subscribed and you want to, anytime I push content, you get a notification. Just reach up in the right-hand corner and do so. Looking at those numbers, big moves to the downside, in particular on the Russell, 3.3% on the downside, 2.5% on the NASDAQ, 1.8% on the S&P, almost 2 points on the NDX, 2%. So you got another down day following Friday's down day, and conversely, you got the up day follow through elsewhere, like bonds. Bonds, huge move to the upside, 2.5%, blows out the highs, sends rates to their lows, and I mean, we haven't seen these yields this low in, I don't know if we ever have, quite honestly. You'd have to go back a lot farther than my data shows. Dollar surges up again, almost 1%. Gold tax on 0.53. You got the indexes in Europe getting slammed again, 3% on the two majors there. And if we look at the Nikkei, I don't have the Nikkei up. I'll have to get that back up here. It was down. Also, actually, it was up last night. We actually had the Hong Kong market down, and the Chinese market did trade slightly higher. So let's take a look at these charts now. Unfortunately, I'm coming to you a little bit early tonight, so I don't have volumes on the charts. So we'll have to actually look at the SPYs to get a sense of the volume, then we'll come back. So let's do that first. You can see the volume tails off from Friday, not as heavy as it was. And if we look at the Qs, going to see the same thing. So yes, we got big volume, but the volume tails off. That's true in Europe as well. So that's the backdrop. So now let's go back to the charts of the indexes themselves and look at what they're doing. Now, I had told subscribers yesterday in a broadcast yesterday morning that I do every weekend for them, giving them the larger picture, telling them what's going on, what it looks like to me. And what I did is I came in here, I do a broadcast, also do some notes. There's some notes here. I told them, look at 1993. I suspect that's where we're going to try to get to. I think that's probably worst case. And in fact, 1993 was the number. It got slightly under it, 1991.68. I suspect this is probably where you're going to see the bounce from, folks. Now, on the way back up, you're going to have retest regenerates bearishly, right? So in other words, if we come to the low that was broken today, that's going to be the first one. You go to the one right above it, is up there. And I suspect now, given the follow through today, that overlap area is here, and that's where you're going to have to look for these guys to turn around and try to sell this again on the bounce, right? So as it comes back up, that's the area more than likely you're going to see sellers want to step back in. If we pull over the weekly, I talked about the fact that this more and more was looking like what we had seen before and getting that push to the downside today, just like we saw in the previous consolidation that eventually broke down. Question is are we in the breakdown, or are we before the real breakdown? I've told subscribers what I think, and it wouldn't be fair to give everything away here. So, I'll leave it at that, but that's the question you have to ask. Is this just going to continue, or are you going to get a bounce? I've already given you a hint, and that is that I think we'll bounce. The question is how far. If we look at the NASDAQ, NDX, and the Russell, let's start with these and just walk through them. I'm going to pull over the weekly charts because the dailies aren't going to show you much, because now you're below everything in terms of the short-term range. So in other words, on the daily charts, all you're looking at is this area, and you just blow away the bottoms. So if we go back to the NASDAQ, what's the NASDAQ doing? Coming back deep into the big high volume bar, and starts to come into the top of this last breakdown, before the low. Anything significant here? Not as much as we see elsewhere. Let's go to the NDX. And if we look at the NDX itself, what we see there also on a weekly chart is the NDX coming into that same area that we just saw on the NASDAQ. Finally, on the Russell. On the Russell, this had been the strongest index as we went up, right? It outran everybody else off this last bottom. In the January-February time frame, actually February time frame, outran them all on the way up in terms of percentages. As it comes down, it gets deep into the breakdown bar now. And usually when you see that kind of action, you're going to try to get to the other side of it before it's over. And so you have to expect that this area down here is the target. Yeah, you can get bounces, but that's probably the target, as we look forward. Again, I'm not going to have volumes overseas, but we really should take a look at the European markets and see what those look like. So let's do that. I'm actually going to start with the Swiss market, because the Swiss market once again is looking like the strongest market in Europe, or certainly of the the ones worth watching. Inside day, right? Volume does dissipate, I believe, again today. I didn't see the volumes on the Swiss market. I'm just guessing it did what the others did. It is still under these lows. Certainly got the retest regens on the way back up. But actually held one more time, held pretty good, and that's what I said in the Swiss broadcast this last weekend. If we go over to Germany, Germany gets under back over, has less volume today. That says Germany's going to try to bounce. Even with all this carnage, it's going to try to put a bounce back up there. And if we look at the CACs, not the same story. So you've got a different situation in those two markets. CACs wants to get to the lows, and actually if we go back to Germany on a weekly, Germany has the same setup, although it's stronger, right? It's into the bar, but it's not as deep. I think you get a bounce first, then you try to come back. If we look at Hong Kong, right, where we saw the big numbers posted to the downside, the Hong Kong market, pretty big day down on Friday. Does go down today, not nearly as bad as it was at one point on Friday for sure, but down, probing those lows again. And here's the Nikkei, huge day down on Friday, down almost 8%. Gets a little bounce today, up 2.5. Can bounce some more here, and then probably turn and run back the other way. I don't know that there's a lot more to look at, although I am going to pull the currencies up and see what they look like with you. I haven't glanced at these today. I know the pound was down heavy again, so let's just start with it and see what it looks like. So if we pull the British pound, take a look at that chart, right? So now the pound, from the highs of Thursday when they thought for sure Brexit wasn't going to happen, to the lows today, you had an 8.3%. Today you had 3%. So you've knocked off 11, almost 11.5% in 2 days. Folks, that's a year's move almost. I mean, certainly months. They're going to bounce this thing here at some point, and a little hammer reversal today, although it's got nothing to hammer under. Same thing on the weekly. Pull the monthly over. Same thing there, right? This is under everything going back decades. Let's go to the other markets, though, and see what they look like. Maybe they'll give us a clue, like the FXE. So starting with it. So a little doji here. That can sometimes be a reversal. See what the weekly looks like. And you're pushing decent volume already this week, coming into the big bar, high volume bars high. The low of the high, basically. The high of the low. Stayed into it, but not too deep. Going to have more volume. Yeah, I mean, there's not a really good tell here. You sure can bounce, but there's not a good tell to tell you that. If we look over at the yen continues its plod north. Now the yen's finally into the bearish retest regen. So I've been waiting on this a long time. I thought this is what was going to happen, and actually we're getting there now. And that's the test, and you're going to have the volume on the test. The overlap area is here, right? And so I suspect it's going to trade into this area, and it's probably going to get a pause, but it's going to hit it with enough volume that it's probably not going to be done either. So this is one of those cases where you're probably going to see the yen pull back and then test again. If I go over and look at the dollar, let's see what the dollar looks like, how much it's rallied. And let's see what that one. So you get over the highs on a daily, on a weekly, really just middle of the range. You can divide this up in 2 ranges. I'll just blow them up here right quick for you. But you essentially have kind of 2 ranges here. You got this top range, on the extra bar there, and you got the bottom range, right? They're kind of equidistant. And you're right at that area. This is usually where you test, you get some sort of a pullback, and then eventually a bounce. So I think you're going to see a bounce in these currencies, and that's probably going to be what lifts these markets. And we'll probably end up reversing these other things that have been running higher, like bonds. Bonds blow away everything to the top side. Big move there, over on the monthly as well, taking yields down to historic levels. 139.59 was the high today. 138.50 was the prior one. And that's quite a run, folks. I don't know what else to say about it. What we're going to do tomorrow, I expect you're going to see bounces out here. How far are they going to carry? Well, I'll save that for members, lest I give everything away. If you want to be a member, you want to get this inside scoop, all you got to do is come over here, get started. 19 a month, folks. You really can't beat it. Have yourself a great night. Take care. I'll see you next time. Good night.